first Q&A session of ViViMaT comes to an end. We have a couple of questions for Jagjeevan Bhamra, Hanna Tsybenko, and Shivaranjan Raghuraman right after this. Coatings is a peer-reviewed journal of coatings and surface engineering published online by MDPI on a monthly basis. Yeah, while we're with people in the UK, Jagjeevan, are you ready? Are you ready for me?
I am ready for you.
Thank you. I was very interested in your talk because I've also been dabbling with Reactive F recently, and it's a difficult job, I must admit. It's not that easy. So I was wondering, you spent quite a bit of your talk going through the actual potentials that you used, because it's, imperative, no pun intended, that that those are really, spot on, so that they won't produce any rubbish. So I was wondering, were you able to use them basically out of the box? I saw you credited Audrey van Duin. So was there a lot of, let's say, refitting necessary to get them to do what you needed them to do, or could you use them sort of as they came?
In the paper, our work, we used two force fields actually. So we used a silicon force field and a calcite force field. So for the silicon one, that contains silicon, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. So it's quite a good force field just to use out of the box, really. There's nothing needed to be fixed with that. It was used for silicon carbides originally, so it was quite a good fit for our work. For the calcite one, however, there isn't really many force fields that are able to model solid calcite materials. Most of them model aqueous stuff, so CaCO3 in solution, basically. So for that force field, Adri actually did a lot of work looking at solid calcite, and he helped us a lot fitting the parameters and finding a suitable force field that was able to model a system that we were interested in. So basically the answer is both. One we could use out the box, and one we have to do a lot of work trying to get right.
So may I ask, how long did that actually take? Because we've had one person at my other company, not the TU, but Ag Research, where I work at, and there's one colleague who's trying his best to get a potential to work, and it's taking for ages. So in years. Can you tell me how long it took to actually? I mean, of course, it's Adri. It's basically the inventor involved in this. But how long does it take to get it from the intent to do it to actually being able to use it and make production runs?
It's been, I'd say, a good 6-7 months. October really is when we started using it. So we tried a bunch of different force fields. So the silicon we got actually really lucky with. For the quartz structure, that was bang on straight away. The calcite one is a bit fiddly, so we messed around with a few different force fields. I think initially we tried maybe 4 or 5, and then we found the best fit using Adri's help. But yeah, so it does take a while messing around with force fields. It's quite a painful process as well to try and parameterize the force fields for your own sort of work. I'm not quite sure how Adri and others do it, but it's something I want to try and do. My DFT knowledge isn't up to scratch just yet, but hopefully it will be soon, and then hopefully we can even improve these force fields and see how they work in different environments, different situations, and exploit them even more, really.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. And the second question is also a little bit technical, but so when you were looking at the actual reactions, when you had those basically time developments of how certain bonds evolve, okay, you also look at the bonds tables. You look at basically the bond order of the bonds. And I was wondering if you have had any trouble, or if you had to fiddle around with the actual bond order cutoff to actually determine what constitutes a bond and what doesn't. Because LAMMPS basically outputs everything above a bond order of 0.3 and considers it a bond. But I've noticed that in some systems you get kind of spurious results sometimes. Some things that shouldn't be a bond, but LAMMPS or React makes them look like one. So have you dabbled in trying to optimize where that cutoff should be to actually get a cleaner view of the structures that reacts and lamps actually produce?
Yeah, so we just try a range of bond orders really, and because when lamps actually gives you an output for XLF data, it's a bit difficult to read, so you have to. So we have a Python script actually that can just run through it and print out the bonds that are involved. And just by looking at the data once it's been outputted, you can determine how good the bond order was. So yeah, we did try a bunch of bond orders, and I can't remember what we settled on actually, but the one we settled on seemed to have the best fit for our data. But yeah, it's a bit fiddly. It's just trying a bunch and seeing what's best really.
So it's basically also looking at histograms and checking, where the tail really tapers off, and then looking at whatever you're missing when you cut off there, and checking if that's reasonable or not, I guess. So it's just
exactly, and you don't want really over coordination of atoms. So something's obviously not chemically possible, then we've gone too far. Or so it's just finding the right balance, like you said, looking at histograms and looking at the data visually, and then just using basic chemistry knowledge and seeing, does this actually make sense? Or
So that means I have to start studying chemistry, right? Okay.
You're halfway there with physics.
Yeah. So what are the next plans? I don't remember seeing, the outlook part of your talk. So what's the next thing that you're going to tackle?
So at the moment we're working on tipware actually. So if you remember the systems from our presentation, the quartz surface is actually a very hard material, and in extreme scenarios we can actually see tip, so wear of the diamond tip as it runs over the quartz. So that's what we're looking at the moment. It hasn't really been done before, so that should be quite interesting and seeing how far we can take that. We've got some promising results, so look out.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. And I see Daniel about once a week, so I'm going to ask him how you're doing. Or I'm just going to ask you.
Yeah, hopefully he says good things.
Well, yeah. Well, he referred you, so he must believe in you.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. And
no, thank you for hosting this.
No, sure. And I'll pass the baton to Carsten again for another set of questions for somebody else. Thanks, Jagjeevan.
Yeah. Thank you also from my side, and also greetings to Daniele to London. Maybe just a side question before we go into a little bit deeper. So Stefan, Hanna, actually, Stefan was wondering a little bit how you get so many people watching your video. So how many people you paid actually to get them watching your video? Because I think you are the one with the highest record on the YouTube channel, right? Have you checked that, Hanna?
Not paid, but honestly, my true to God question was, and I think this can be used by people who don't get as many views, because to me it's a complete riddle how this works. So I was wondering if Hanna had some sort of a trick, if she, I don't know, showed all her.
Maybe she wants. Yeah, maybe she wants to share the secret with us. Who knows? But I was really impressed when I saw the numbers of clicks. Yeah, Hanna, any explanation for that? Quick one.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes,
I think that most of the views are from my family actually, because they were so happy to see me the first time on YouTube and showing off my work. But probably also
big family.
Probably also some colleagues from my university when I did my master's. So it was my Ukrainian university and Otto von Guericke University in Magdeburg. So I think people from there also were watching. So no really, specific secrets, sorry.
no specific secrets to share. Okay, I see. But anyway, great talk. And I like that people, of course, take notice of that, and was really cool. Maybe coming to scientific question, and then I will handle over to Stefan later on again. He has also a couple of questions to you, but maybe to mix a little bit up, not to let the people wait too long in the queue. One of our colleagues, actually, Andre, he was asking, do you think the size of the sample and the way it is fixed can have any influence on the scratch indentation hardness results?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Andre. So you were very generous with many nice questions. So as far as I know, there were some studies, mostly using finite element modeling that focus on the effect of the sample size on the measured hardness and elastic modulus. And for example, like in principle, it would be obvious to say that the closer the indentation or the scratch size would be to the sample size, the stronger would be this influence. And there were some relations found that, for example, as for the hardness measurement, the sample radius has to be at least 3 times larger than the radius of the imprint to avoid this sample size effect. And there were also some additional depth relations that also was used to study the effect. So in my case, the samples that were used were much larger than the tested volume in any case. So we think we omitted these effects. And also regarding the sample mounting, it also could affect the results by changing the frame compliance. So the total compliance, it's known that it is including the contributions from both the sample and the frame. And because the frame compliance is affected by this stiffness of the load frame components, the sample mounting would be one of these, and it would also affect the frame compliance. So it has to be calibrated precisely.
Okay, great. Yeah, excellent. And maybe another short one, and then, as I said, Stefan will have a couple of minutes, maybe another set of questions to you. There was also a question, I think that is even from Stefan. Do you know of any readily available formula relating the indented tip size to the plastic strains it causes in the sample during scratch?
So as far as I know, there's no such simple relation between the tip size and the plastic strain. So so first, the deformations under the indented tip are highly inhomogeneous, and therefore, like some relations that actually try to link the radius, the tip radius, or the attack angle. In fact, they related to a representative strain or average volumetric strain. So for the spherical tips, it is known that deformation is proportional to the ratio between, for example, contact area radius and tip radius. And I think I could find such relations in work of our French colleagues like Sébastien Lafayette, Christian Gauthier, and Jean-Luc Boucalier. They mostly work on polymers, but they also use such relations for metals, as far as I remember.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the very detailed answer about that. Yeah, great. So thanks for the moment.
And I have one more for Hanna. And what was that? Okay, I watched your video. You did, scratch hardness is the main thing, and I think you did a wonderful job at really sticking to that, and ringing it for so long until there was no more to get out of it. Now, I also do, well, I also participate in an effort where people do scratches, and I am mainly the evaluation monkey for experimental and simulated scratches. And I was wondering, I'm pretty sure you're aware of Zum gas abrasive wear factor, the FAB. It was just not part of your presentation, but I was wondering, since, I think it's a very powerful instrument. So FAB basically, let's say, is, what is it? It's one for, well, you can see the, let's say, the difference between ideal plowing and ideal cutting, sort of, yeah? And it should be between 0 and 1, but sometimes it can get weird values like above 1 or below 0 for some weird reason. And I was just wondering what your experiences with it were and if it's any good for your work. Can you make use of that FAB?
So we were actually not trying to quantify FAB, and partially this is because we already started experiencing the problems that might occur with quantifying it. Well, while we were looking at the scratch hardness just simply by measuring the width of the vertex group from using a confocal microscope. So if you look at the part when we show this comparison of different scratch hardnesses, and that, for example, the scratch hardnesses given by the width parameters do not provide us very consistent results. one of the things that we pointed out is that the problem might be hiding also in the onset of this microcutting and formation of these side flakes that are not actually bulk material underneath. So you look always on them with a top-down microscopy with an SEM or with a confocal microscope. But in fact, in some studies that showed this transition from plastic blowing to microcutting, it was shown that those flakes are basically like when you scratch, when you, for example, want to get some piece of butter and it forms such kind of a flake. So it does not provide an additional support, and it cannot be like the quantification of this removed volume as it is in Tsunga work. It cannot be very precise in that case. So we decided not to look into that further and just state that there might be possible problems with quantification. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. That pretty much sort of that's also the feeling that I have. If you're lucky, then you can get some really nice, information spanning several length scales. But I have the feeling that many of the data points are just completely unusable because it seems to be very prone to outliers. Yeah. Okay, well, that's something off my mind. Shiva, may I have your attention? You've been sitting there so patiently for over an hour now.
It's all good.
I don't know what Carsten has planned for you, but there are one or two things, or let's just stick to one thing. When I saw your map, the map that you pulled up that basically framed your own results, into the framework of a bigger picture, and you so nicely, went through all the limits, the Archer limit and so on. And I mean, that really impressed me because I'm also recently really into trying to make everything into maps, like a color map of 2D or ideally 3D or whatever you can do to really give the reader or the scientist or engineer a really good overview. Now, I was wondering, I mean, you have your own set of experiments that you did. And of course, that map was already a little bit idealized, I guess, because you put your results are in there, but you no longer have the data points in there. So I was wondering, did you do it, or would it be a good idea to flesh that out with more experimental data in those regions that you couldn't cover? Because I mean, you have some theory that would tell you how this should go, and you made sure that your own results followed it in the region where you could see. But the question is, could you make sure? I'm thinking of how Jean-François Molinari did his ductile and brittle wear thing, where they looked through, I don't know, a gazillion of papers and put all those points in there, and then you could see how it all divided into different regions. Did you also do some of that research, or could you? I mean, now you're at Oak Ridge, so you're busy doing other stuff.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of the. So first of all, I want to confirm you guys can hear me.
Yeah. Can you hear you?
So,
you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's kind of a dream for tribologists to have one single theory that explains all of tribology, or the dependence of friction or wear on several different things. I mean, as you said, the map that we made was idealized and kind of put the focus on our experiments, and then we only went a little bit further in each direction to show, hey, we can also capture some of the behaviors of other systems. There are systems that we cannot capture with our theory, which means that we might have to modify the theory a little bit, or we have to maybe make it more accurate to describe the chemical systems. So yes, as you said, it would be an amazing study to just look at different wears and make a map out of them to show and see how it fits, or how our theory can or cannot explain those different kinds of wears or different kinds of frictional behaviors that are seen in systems. Did you guys lose me?
I think Stefan is somehow frozen. I do not, I do
Yeah.
not see him moving anymore. He's paralyzed by the answer. No, he's back again. Yeah.
Your microphone's muted, Stefan.
Stefan, your microphone is off.
Sorry. Yeah, well, I was cursing a lot before, so it's good that it was off. So I'm going to have to watch the replay of that, I think, because I was just informed that my wife and my son are apparently streaming something else, and suddenly my internet just crapped out. Well, I'm pretty sure it was a good answer.
Well, yeah, basically I was just saying it is a very good, study to incorporate all of them and see if our theory actually holds up. And if not, why does it not hold up? So that's an answer we want to look at, right? So absolutely, we want to look at other kinds of wear or friction behaviors.
But do I see it correctly that you're not going to do that yourself anymore? Because, I mean, basically that part of your career is now over and you've moved on? Or so well, somebody else will do it?
I'm pretty sure this work will be carried forward. And I already know that one of my, you want to call it juniors or colleagues, maybe a better word, is working on it. But I'm not exactly sure what direction they're going. But I might be involved in it in terms of, some pointers here and there in terms of setting up the experiment, because I was the one who devised the experiments to do them and programmed them. But I may not be the lead investigator in that study.
So basically, I would contact Johnny Feltz about it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you could, yeah, exactly, to know the future of the experiments.
Yeah. Well, and the picture that you showed of him, I mean, his beard has come out wonderfully. I mean, it's like it's getting broader and broader. It's just very impressive.
Yeah.
And I think I still owe him a t-shirt.
By the way, that was pre-COVID, so.
Yeah, right. I mean, what, did he have to take it off to put the mask inside, or to get his face sure. The mask?
I haven't met him in a year now. I have to actually go meet him once. I haven't seen him in person.
Yeah. Oh, I think somebody's trying to get in here. Let's see if they actually make it in. One last question about that map. So actually two small questions. So I said I saw you actually had force on the horizontal axis. Would it make sense to re-render that in terms of stresses or something to make it less tip on something? But yeah, would you see that as a thing that would make sense?
That is correct. Yeah, because I mean, stress is a more general unit that kind of normalizes to the contact area. So obviously, it would make sense to plot them as stresses. We just went with force. Actually, in the hindsight, it would have been a better idea to plot it as stress. Having said that, in our experiments, we do reach stresses close to a gigapascal, which is pretty high for atomic scale systems. And if you're looking at single layers of 2D materials, it's pretty high, enough to initiate catastrophic wear. We do see that in our systems. So we didn't really think of it that way. But yes, if you're doing a meta study, it would absolutely be crucial that you plot stresses versus wear rate or wear volume or something like that, so that you can incorporate macro scale, micro scale, and atomic field systems all in one map.
Yeah, I mean, the way you put it there certainly would lend itself to really, I mean, with the logarithmic scales and everything.
So actually his question was the upper velocity boundary of 1 meter per second. He was asking, is this really the end of the story, or is it just for chemical systems? And then he was asking, I would imagine that many tribology systems operate up into the single digit meter per second regime.
Yeah, that is true. And there are also a lot of experimental studies that have probed several meters per second range as well. In fact, okay, so the speed range that we chose or we operated is like nanometers per second, the AFM experiments that we do. And the regimes that we were focused on were just showing the Archer type wear, and the other end where you're just completely vanishing the barrier with extremely high applied forces. So we were focusing on narrower window, but as you said, it kind of ties to the first question. There are certain wear behaviors at extremely high speeds. You do see different effects. So it's something we can include, and it probably should be included if we are doing a wider study.
Mm-hmm. Maybe something off topic from the science questions.
Sure.
What was your experience, or what kind of experience you had during the pandemic situation with these online platforms, and what is your specific experience in this context? Do you like it, or do you say, okay, I'm happy again to have a real conference where I can have some beer or wine or whatever with somebody else, or coffee or tea, or do you say, no, that's totally fine. I like really these online platforms, and I could think of doing this forever, or what is your feeling about it?
No, I'm an outdoor person. I would absolutely love to travel and meet people in real life.
Okay.
Now, so there are advantages to just having virtual sessions too. I kind of feel like, especially in Oak Ridge National Lab, in our group, they make a lot of tutorials as to how, we are primarily user facility. So they do make a lot of tutorial videos now. They're forced to make them because you cannot get the user to come in. And that happens to actually benefit a wider audience than they initially intended to. So sometimes it is useful. I think, my wish is going forward, there has to be a virtual and a real part to every conference. So there was already, to be honest, but now it's going to be, the virtual part is probably going to be a little bit more involved, because we have developed the tools to have virtual sessions. We have been used to it now. But personally, I would love to meet people, in real life.
I fully agree. This online world is okay to some extent, but it starts bothering now after 1.5 years already. Thomas, what is your opinion about that? You traveled a lot before, or are you okay with this kind of format, or?
Yeah, it's a good. So my only other experience with a virtual thing was the STLE conference in May, which was a virtual conference where you uploaded pre-recorded talks, and I was not a big fan of that, honestly. I feel like you don't really watch a lot of talks because you're just doing other things. And one of my favorite conferences is definitely like the Gordon Research Conference, because I think you actually get more accomplished, like drinking beer or coffee or something with a colleague, than this virtual platform. The virtual platform's nice because you can meet with everyone from around the world, but I'd love to go back to in-person conferences. I think I've done more talking with colleagues, drinking beer, than anything else. So yeah, I would love to go back to it and travel more.
Yeah, definitely, because
and don't forget the beer pong.
Yeah.
No, but the Gordon Research Conference you mentioned, of course, is one good example. Another one I like to go is the ICMCDF in San Diego, which is really cool, and you always have excellent talks and you meet nice colleagues. It's like a little family. It's really cool. Hanna, how is that in your case? From Max Planck Institute, have you traveled a lot before, or is that now also okay for you, or how's your feeling about it?
Yeah, so in my case, I had experiences both with offline and online conferences. So the online conference I visited last year was the MSE, which was supposed to be held in Darmstadt, but then it was turned to be an online event instead. And I think the truth is always in the middle. So the online conferences have definitely the benefit, at least in the format that MSE has done it, that the talks were available for the week after the conference was done. So apparently, if you were interested in 2 or 3 topics that were like all the talks were at the same time, you could go back and look it up, and also figure out who you need to talk to. So you were not left out in principle. But on the other hand, you never get a real chance to meet behind the curtain, and also, as you said, have a couple of beers and establish a really good personal connection. So in that way, offline conferences also provide a good platform. So I think people need to start figuring out how to balance, and holding both formats is a great thing.
Maybe this hybrid approach is not that bad. So we have occasions where, as many people now said, the online conferences or the online platforms may be helpful, supportive, and smart to do it. But on the other hand, of course, we have some big events, also like the World Tribology Congress. Imagine this would take place as a real online event. You would run really crazy. Too many people attending, too many parallel sessions and symposia, so very difficult. Yeah, Stefan, I think we do not have to torture the people any longer. So I'm very glad, we are both very glad that you first of all joined ViViMaT channel, and that of course we would be happy if you could further communicate it to other colleagues in the department, also early researchers, young postdocs, whoever comes into your mind, because ViViMaT will of course continue. And we might have even a third release by the end of this year, but this is something I have to discuss with Stefan in detail. Is not yet confirmed, but yeah, of course it will continue, and we would be glad if you could just recommend some other colleagues to participate in the next run. Yeah, thanks a lot. It was really good. I think we had a also intense discussion with some really deeper questions, others maybe not too deep, but for clarifying. Because you know, tribology is very interdisciplinary, so people have different backgrounds. I'm a material scientist by my background in education, and of course all the people who listened and watched to your videos, they are more or less deep in the matter, and I also therefore ask some of you, I would say, more general questions to get a better basic understanding of the matter. You can always go deep with questions, but sometimes it's the very simple ones that are maybe of particular interest for the broad listeners and people watching the videos. So if you are allowed again, if we are all allowed again to go back to some kind of normality and we can travel, of course we would be also happy to welcome you personally in Vienna. Vienna is a beautiful city, so we would be really happy to have you here for a short stay, or if you plan some trip to Europe, and some are further located, of course, please feel free to step by and to visit me and Stefan at the university, and we can then go out for some beer or whatever you prefer. I would be very happy. I wish you all the best, and I would be glad to stay in contact, and stay safe and healthy. See us then and hear us next time. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, dear people.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.